When Syracuse receiver Trebor Pena entered the transfer portal last week, Miami was instantly linked, but then things got quiet. It's not quiet anymore because the Miami Hurricanes are going to get a visit.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episodes, we'll have two of them today at least, are brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Consider this one to be a breaking news appetizer for our full episode coming up shortly with the Truth Teller on a Truth Teller Tuesday. But we had to bust in here because the Miami Hurricanes, some big news just came down. First reported by Matt Zenitz of 24/7 Sports. So credit to Matt for this scoop. The Hurricanes are hosting later this week standout Syracuse slot receiver Trebor Pena. You remember, guys, midweek last week when Pena decided to leave Syracuse, which surprised a lot of folks given the big year that he had and the fact that he stuck with that program at least throughout spring. When he first entered the transfer portal, Miami was getting instant buzz. Hurricanes, a program to watch. Miami, Texas Tech were seen as programs to watch, but the cycle from a Miami point of view didn't really progress from there. In fact, Pena so far has taken one visit, and that was to the Penn State Nittany Lions. That was over the weekend. Now, we have talked about, we'll continue to talk about, from the Penn State side, at least from their reporting, they believe they had an awesome visit with Pena, and I don't doubt the validity in that. And let's remember, Penn State was a national semifinalist in the college football playoff. They've got a lot of their weapons back, including their quarterback, which I have mixed feelings about. I'm not a huge Drew Aller guy. He's good. He just has choked in some really big moments. I mean, Penn State is a really good team, and it seems ready-made to bring in a guy like Trebor Pena. But as good as that visit may have been, he left Happy Valley without committing. And it's now been several days since he left Penn State without a commitment. So if the Nittany Lions were hoping to kind of get him to shut down the rest of his process and give them an answer quickly, they have not gotten that. And the longer removed he is from that Penn State visit, the better that is for programs like Miami and perhaps Texas Tech that are still in the mix. But we had been waiting for confirmation of if and when Pena would lock in a visit to Miami. There's also been maybe a little bit of wondering as to how much all in Miami would be for Pena, because let's remember, Pena being a slot receiver, Miami has some good options there. Ray Joseph, heading into his third year, has had a good spring. True freshman Malachi Toney, who seems like he's going to be a stud in the future, perhaps in the present as well, also comes off a good spring. So how all in would Miami and will Miami go into a slot receiver? We seem to be getting the answer that it's definitely something Miami is at least willing to explore when you get a proven talent like Pena in the transfer portal. And again, folks in Syracuse were not happy to lose this guy. Led his team in receptions last year with 84, second on the team in receiving yardage at 941, averaged 11.2 yards per grab. Obviously, you're throwing him some shorter stuff. He's not necessarily a deep threat, Pena, in the role that he plays, and he scored a team-high 9 touchdowns at the Cuse last year. And he's also got some versatility as a multifaceted weapon on an offense because he had 12 carries for 72 yards and a rushing touchdown last year for Syracuse. And something that is not up for debate is slot receivers are very important and featured heavily in a Shannon Dawson offense. And of course, we all saw the big numbers that Xavier Restrepo put up the last couple of years at Miami. When Dawson was at Houston, he had Tank Dell, who was an absolute stud in the slot, who put up big-time numbers and is now enjoying an NFL career. And we expect that's going to be the case for Restrepo as well, who's about to be drafted in a few days. So slot receiver is super important, and Trebor Pena at that particular spot is the best available guy right now. and he's going to lock in that Miami visit. And again, immediately after Pena decided to take his talents from the transfer portal, Miami was probably the first school that was mentioned. Texas Tech was also mentioned. He then decided to take the visit to Penn State, left Penn State without committing there. So the Hurricanes are going to have an opportunity, and this is shaping up to be a really busy week, folks. And we're going to have the truth teller, Bruce Warner, on with us in our main episode, which is coming up in a few minutes, as Miami is hosting a trio of guys today in the portal. They're going to be hosting some more guys later on this week. But Miami later on today is going to be hosting running back Shamar Brown from North Dakota State, Boise State defensive tackle Braxton Feely, and Kansas State safety Noah King. Now, Noah King is essentially a recruit. This is a class of 2025 guy who has not actually taken a snap at Kansas State. Is going to be a true freshman this coming season. So Miami can essentially get like a late addition to the class of 2025 if they can get him to come here. The Hurricanes also, for later on this week, have a visit locked up with Tony Johnson, slot receiver out of Cincinnati. And it looks like around that same time frame, perhaps Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, Miami's going to be getting this visit from Trebor Pena. The Hurricanes are yet to land a transfer portal commitment here in April. They had a really solid initial transfer portal class in December and January with Carson Beck, who's cleared to throw for the past 9 days again, going through his player-led workouts now, which is good. Quarterback Carson Beck from Georgia, tight end Alex Bauman from Tulane, center James Brockermeyer from TCU, cornerback Xavier Lucas from Wisconsin, cornerback Charles Brantley, probably going to play nickel here, out of Michigan State, tight end Jack Nickel, safety Zechariah Poyser, defensive tackle David Blay, cornerback Emmanuel Carnley has actually already left Miami. He arrived in January, and he took his talents back into the portal. We'll talk about that one a little bit more later today. Cornerback Ethan O'Connor from Washington State, and receiver C.J. Daniels from LSU. So you scratch Carnley off of that list, but the rest of those guys are in, and the Hurricanes are looking to add receivers, looking to add defensive tackles, looking to add safeties, perhaps looking to land linebackers as well. Taggart from BYU is someone who comes to mind who's got a relationship from Mario Cristobal. Miami is going to go after. So the portal shopping will continue, my friends. And let me know in the comments below, are you all in on Trebor Pena? Because this has been one of the most polarizing names to come into the Miami space. Because, yeah, like Trebor Pena put up a lot of production last year at Syracuse, and I think he can and would make this team better. But are you worried about, recruiting over potentially a guy like Ray Joseph, who you already have in that room as slot receiver? Now, I know from a Miami point of view, the mission statement is and should be surrounding Carson Beck with as much talent and experienced talent as you possibly can to try to maximize his 1 year. So you guys tell me, with a guy like Trebor Pena, is the juice worth the squeeze? Leave me a comment below. And folks, we're minutes away from a new episode with the Truth Teller right here on Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.